Contracting officers are required by the FAR to determine price reasonableness in negotiating a contract price. TINA requires submitting cost and pricing data. Current threshold, forgot, 750K, not 700,000. And the contracting officer is required to establish a fair and reasonable price. You as a contractor is responsible for providing adequate supporting data. The contractor bears the burden of proof in establishing reasonableness of proposed costs, and the basis and rationale should be provided as part of the proposal so the government can place reliance on your information, that it is current, accurate, and complete. FAR Part 15, Table 15.2, Tom had mentioned, gives instructions for submitting cost and price proposals when certified cost or pricing data are required. And the DFARS, there's one of those agency supplements, stands for Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations, 252, 215, 7009, provides a proposal adequacy checklist. There's a new requirement. You provide location of requested information or an explanation of why requested information is not provided. Table 15.2, it breaks out what the elements of an adequate proposal are. Your proposal should have the cost elements disclosed. Excuse me. That would be direct labor, your direct materials, direct subcontracts, any ODCs like travel or smaller direct costs, and disclosing your indirect rates. Direct labor is pretty easy. You should show detailed schedules of the labor rates that you are going to propose and the number of hours that will be used to perform the contract requirements. The adequate proposal should include the basis for your proposed labor rates. Are they an average of individuals performing in certain labor categories? How did you figure out what the proposed labor rate is by labor category? Or you can even specifically propose individuals by name on a contract if it's a small contract. You should also provide the basis of the proposed labor hours. In other words, how many you've experienced costs before, you know how many labor hours it will incur, that you will incur to perform the different functions. Comparison of proposed hours to experienced hours in the past for production of similar units or items, and any learning curve applications. If you have historical cost for performing a certain function, and as time goes along, for future contracts, your cost experience or your labor hours incurred may start to go down because workers are now repeating a repetitive task possibly, or they've done it before, now I can do it this year with fewer labor hours. Then you should be able to estimate the lower cost or labor hours incurred. You can use learning curves to show that. Your proposed material cost, you should include a consolidated price summary of the individual material quantities required, called a consolidated bill of materials. In addition, the consolidated bill should provide the basis for the pricing of the materials. You can use vendor quotes, invoice prices that you've paid, competitive bids, include raw materials, parts, components, anything needed, services also that you may have to purchase to produce and performed by others. You should identify the item and show the source, quantity, and price. If you do plan on subcontracting out parts of the contract, you are responsible for providing your own cost price analysis of the subcontractors that price that you're going to use. The adequate proposal should include the basis of the proposed subcontract cost including the prime, you as the prime, your price analysis of all subcontract proposals. You submit the contractor's cost of pricing as part of your own cost and pricing data. You should include data showing the degree of competition and the basis for establishing the source and price reasonableness. Again, the government wants competitive pricing, so you should get, there should be some competition in providing the sub. If it's sole source, that's an exception. But again, still you have to, well, it still has to be a fair and reasonable price even in sole source. You're supposed to, the prime is responsible for providing price analysis. If you haven't, then in practice, the government will probably assign an auditor to to look at the subcontractor's pricing proposal also. The prime contractor is also responsible for managing its subcontracts per FAR Part 42202. If you have a cost reimbursable contract, so you'll be submitting an ICE submission, if you've, as part of that contract, you have subcontracted with another company on a cost reimbursable basis, the subcontractor is also responsible for providing the incurred cost submission. That's part of that's something that when I was in DCAA early in the 2000s up to 2010, that requirement kind of slipped through the cracks. But now DCAA is looking to make sure that primes issuing subcontracts under auditable contracts, that the subcontractor is definitely submitting their ICE submissions also. But you as the prime are responsible